Right. So Max and I are microdosing Max Keiser's.
What will the Oracle's predictions be today?
The world
Oh
we
no!
have
Hold on
been
one
living in
second.
is an economic fiction.
And it's like the
Oh shit! I don't know how to fucking do all this shit. You know. There you go. Sorry about that. Sorry. I had to delete a video that started playing. I automatically started playing it. So, yeah, this is Max Keiser's Black Hole of Debt, and we are microdosing it. How do you feel on this Saturday?
That's great. Love that.
I'm going to go over to YouTube.
Right.
Multitasking here. Make sure we're going live, because otherwise, you know, we might not be live. But, oh, shit. Yeah, there we are. Okay. So, microdosing Black Hole of Debt. And the reason why I call it that is because, of course, the global financial market is melting down. We see over and over in the headlines, and we've been covering that on our podcast as well, which is that we have the meltdown of the global bond market. $7 trillion wiped out. And it made me think, you know, as I was reading everybody's tweets, and people are tweeting about this, or talking about all the bad debt. They were talking about the blow up. And I thought, you know what? That reminds me of what Max Keiser had said back in 2008, 2009, when we did the Oracle on BBC World during the global financial crisis. And I played that clip, and I was going to play that clip for you here. And it kind of went ahead, you know, in the middle of us doing this. But the fact is, like, I was going to play that for you here. And instead, I'm going to talk about it because Max was talking about the black hole of debt that was a global financial market, and it was sucking in all that was productive back then in 2008 and 2009. As we were speaking, as you watch that clip, by the way, you know, what you'll notice is that it was in the very, very, very first days and weeks of Bitcoin being born. It had been born on January 3rd, 2009. So here we are, like back then, and Max, so you kind of get a glimpse into the past when Max is the only single person in the world talking about that, talking like this. And now you see people talking like that on Bloomberg, on CNBC, and of course, across Twitter. Everybody speaks like that now.
Well, The Economist magazine put out a story, put out a cover this week, basically that says the Fed has failed. Right? So now for year after year, for the last 20 years, 25 years, through Greenspan, Bernanke, Janet Yellen, Jay Powell, there's been this huge global coordinated talking point agenda that central banks are infallible. We've had some famous magazine covers before. After the 2008 crisis, we had the Committee to Save the World, which was Greenspan, Larry Summers, and Bob Rubin. We have this constant lionization of central bankers as heroes, that money printing and keeping rates artificially low is heroic behavior by the Mandarin kings that run the central bank. And now finally the Economist has admitted that it was a huge canard. It was a failure. It's a gigantic failure, as we've been saying now for almost 20 years, that you cannot print your way to prosperity. All of the, you know, Stacy, for years people have been saying that the amount of people being pulled out of poverty around the world is in the hundreds of millions and billions. And I would say, well, if it's all fake money, then it's a Ponzi scheme and it will blow up. So now we've got millions and billions going back into poverty, especially in countries like the UK, where they're saying that it's been flagged as really the worst in the Eurozone. They're looking for a recession coming very soon. They've got energy insecurity and food insecurity. In the United States, food insecurity is happening for real, and it looks like it's going to happen in a big way. In all over Europe, you've got food insecurity. So the fiat money decades only worked if you could, the principal way the fiat money fraud worked was to hide true price discovery in the commodity sector. So energy and agriculture and metals, price discovery was kept artificially low through money printing. And just a couple of months ago, we have a big commodity producer out there in Eurasia that said, you know what? I think we're going to call time on this. Now we're entering a period of commodity price discovery where commodities are going to go up, 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 and everybody tied to the paper money world will become increasingly more impoverished.
Well, of course, we have to consider the fact that I don't feel too bad for the developed world. They have a lot of stockpile of wealth and equities and assets and house prices. Our house prices going up faster and faster every month. Is like 15% a month right now. Our governments have a huge arsenal of more financial shenanigans and monetary policy. The entirety of Latin America, most of Asia, all of Africa, India, you're going to see some, difficult times ahead. And you're already starting, of course, to see those. You're seeing conflict emerge. And, but of course, yes, the developed countries will also suffer and they will fall out from a higher window up above. But, but the fiat world is over, and that's what we've been reporting. And that's the remarkable thing. That's what I'm saying. Like the black hole of debt is like, we were already saying that. We were warning you back in 2008, 2009, and the content is there for all to see. Most of it, some of it, a lot has been deleted and memory hold, but you can still see glimpses of what we were saying back then. And now, fortunately, since that video of the black hole of debt that we were warning you about, that everything would get sucked into it, then came Bitcoin, which is, of course, everybody compares it to a black hole, but in an opposite way. It's like, it's through the black hole. It's the antimatter or the matter to the matter that is the antimatter of the original black hole. And so of the fiat bad debt. So now we have hard, good money on the other side of that disaster that happened in 2008, 2009. And all those little clips in that video are from October 31st. It was right after then that we started recording the Oracle for BBC World. So October 31st, Satoshi publishes the white paper. January 3rd, 2009, the first block is mined, or he starts running Bitcoin. Then you see that's the exact same time period from those clips of what we're talking. So you're seeing a glimpse into the world that at least we were talking about. Most people weren't. There was a, more of a Jim Cramer sort of style about the financial news. And certainly there was no, how today you have a lot of influencers in the Bitcoin space and in the finance space. At that time, there were definitely none of those. Like, we were the only sort that are vibing like that. But we at that time, we were the only people talking about this possible future that we are in now, where we do have luckily Bitcoin did come along. And Peter Schiff is in one of those clips, of course, and we were talking to him about gold, and he thought gold would be the answer, but obviously gold was not the answer. It was Bitcoin. And so we do have something positive on our side. Everything's positive, negative, all the matter and antimatter had to go somewhere.
Right. So you had commodities were big in the 1970s. Then starting with Reagan and Thatcher, you had paper money took the place of commodities from the early 1980s up until 2022. So that's a 42-year period when paper ruled over commodities. And in 2022, now we're back to commodities ruling the global economy. And the ultimate commodity is Bitcoin. It's the fastest horse in the race, as Paul Tudor Jones has called it. That's still true today as it was 3 or 4 years ago. So if you love commodities, you are going to be ecstatic about Bitcoin because it's the ultimate synthetic digital commodity. It has the added attraction of it makes people insatiably curious to own it. It makes it creates infinite demand amongst human beings. So there's a psychological commodity crossover, Bitcoin and the human psyche. People, once they start buying it, like Michael Saylor and others, they can't stop buying it. So that's a psychological aspect.
Right. The demand creates its own demand and further demand. You can't get enough of it once, because kind of holding it, some people, it takes some, a few moments. very few people take a few moments. Most take weeks, months, years to really get it. And Bitcoin continues to surprise. So, it is like that black hole. So one thing that Stephen Hawking had said about black holes is that, or the Big Bang, what he said is like, it's not even worth trying to imagine like what was on the other side of the Big Bang, because it won't be anything at all. Our laws of physics weren't their laws of physics. So we can't imagine at all what it would be like. And the same thing has happened once we pass through that black hole of bad fiat debt back in 2008 and 2009. This whole 12-year period since then has been the spaghettification process and the disintegration of all the known laws of monetary physics. And we've covered that, again, like on our D-Platform show that we used to talk about, negative interest rates, the negative value placed on oil, at least for a day. Things like that don't make sense if we're disintegrating and, warping through to a new Big Bang situation and our whole entire fabric of our monetary universe.
Right. We don't know what's on the other side of the Bitcoin Singularity.
Yeah.
So people are buying it. It creates infinite demand with Bitcoin, and we see that with a few people that are simply just going to keep buying it no matter what, and that's spreading all over the world, and it leads to the hyper Bitcoinization. It leads to a global Bitcoin standard, and it leads to the collapse of fiat money and kind of the abandonment of gold in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So what's on the other side of the Bitcoin Singularity? We can only speculate. In my view, it's the big global orgasm of hard money, which means all of our subconscious and unconscious minds fuse together in what I call the monetary G-spot. And that's what's on the other side of the Bitcoin Singularity. That's how I see it. That's what I think will happen. We're going to have a love explosion. The love is the only thing that hasn't been monetized in our existence for humans. All other creatures have monetized love. They've experienced love, absolute love. Plants, rocks, animals, planets. But humans, for some reason, are really slow to learn this lesson.
Yeah. Well, I do actually think, the most important commodity will be time and, love. I do believe that, post this new monetary universe. So once we're on the other side, because, we've been so atomized in this hyper globalized neoliberal world that, we're at the millennials or the oldest of the Zoomers are kind of like this weird, that influencer sort of thing that's all fake, that there's nothing real. Like they're all filter, they're all Photoshop. This pure photo. It used to be in our day back in the 80s and 90s. It would just be like the cover of Vogue, and they would complain. People would be like, "Oh, that's obviously photoshopped. It's like the blemishes are photoshopped out." But now everybody walks around with an Instagram photoshopped version of themselves. And I was noticing that like a lot of influencers these days, they have these very young people getting either some sort of like facelift, like Alec Baldwin's 26-year-old daughter got some sort of, it's a minor facelift sort of thing. She got this facelift and she's 26.
I had my pancake batter balls lifted.
Then you have these, everybody gets veneers, these huge teeth. Like
that can go horribly wrong.
Well, no, but it's just like, then you look at Madonna and she's just lives now. She's doesn't live in real world at all anymore. She just lives in Instagram, and she's like, she has the celebrity. She has a lot of fame. She has millions of followers from the previous world of the real world, right? So now she's on Instagram where these filters make her look like 20, 21 years old. They give you the skin texture and the tone and the vibrancy of a 20-year-old. And it's just like, it's passing through to some sort of, it's just part of that looking glass of the spaghettification. It's like the US dollar. It's like all that fiction. As our guest, Andy, as I forget his last name, Zaltzman, he had said that, like, in that clip that of Max Keiser on the Oracle in 2008, 2009, he had said that, we're throwing a bunch of new imaginary money after the old imaginary money, which is driving up the price of the old imaginary money, i.e. all those debts that we didn't want to sink in value. So it's increasing the value of it. But like all this imaginary is, and the fictional and the fake and the fraud is like, zooming all around each other in this whirlwind over the event horizon.
Right. But up until a few months ago, then time has been called on the imaginary fake paper money printing world. And now reality is asserting itself in a big way. So the bond market dropped so far. It's about $8 trillion worth of value has been evaporated in this bond market sell-off. And you've got, if you look at previous bond sell-offs, going back to a big one back in 1993 when the bond markets were down 3.5% or so, that was considered a very big wipeout in the bond market. This is more than double on a percent basis. It looks like there's room to go on the downside. The 10-year Treasuries at just under 3%. That's up from 0.6% just a few months ago. The 30 years also inching up. Mortgage rates are in the 5.5 to 6 range. That's up from under 3. So rates are telegraphing that the bond market, which is one of these Ponzi schemes that's been puffed up for decades, is starting to fall apart. And of course, the central bank is saying, we're going to raise rates. You can't taper a Ponzi scheme. And the game is that they hope that markets will come down to a point where there's panic, and then they can launch QE5 and bail everybody out. Last time we visited this, the idea was that all the bad debts on the central banks, and the way they got that bad debt was bailing out Wall Street in 2008. Remember 2008? All the banks around the world had, let's call it $20 trillion worth of bad debt that they couldn't sell. There was no market for it. They'd accumulated it for the fees that it was generating and the huge bonuses they were getting. So they put all that bad debt on the balance sheet of the central banks in exchange for fresh treasury bills, and they just recapitalized all these sick, dying banks. Now the central banks, 12 years later, they are now suffering the same fate. So now they have probably 150 trillion, if all is counted, in really toxic, unsellable garbage debt. So now they're going to have to roll that into a super global bank, maybe the IMF's super global bank or some other super global bank. They're going to have to bring in a new super global bank to roll all this bad debt into. They have the CBDC, the central bank digital currency. That's relatively new. When we first started talking about it, there were no central bank digital currencies. Now they have the central bank digital currencies. Stacy is of the mind that on one of these long weekends that we used to see all the time back in 2008, when the bankers were rewriting all the financial regulations on the fly and like turning Goldman Sachs from an investment bank to a savings bank overnight, thus qualifying it for huge bailouts and doing things like that with no congressional oversight and just writing checks willy-nilly. We'll see. We'll come out of a weekend and it'll be, oh, by the way, your deposits at the bank, your local bank, you had $10,000. Well, now it's $100,000, but it's a CBDC. That money you had in there is gone. It's this new CBDC. It's in there. We gave you 10 times the amount that you had. But that's the beginning then of this new way to control the economy and the banking system with CBDC, which is surveillance money, which is obviously going to bring in a more draconian surveillance state into the economy, and it would have things attached to it like an expiration date. So here's $100,000, but if you don't spend it by the certain time, it'll expire worthless, like a frequent flyer mile.
Well, all of our money is expiring, evaporating. Let's call it that. The biggest bond bubble in 800 years continues to deflate as hawkish Fed comments shake up the bond markets. The value of global bonds has dropped by another 524 billion this week, bringing total loss from all-time highs to 6.9 trillion. So it's kind of interesting that, we've come full circle. Like we're kind of like at the Bill Hicks, George Carlin sort of level. Sometimes you tune into like during, George Bush Jr., his invasion of Iraq. If you went back and looked at some Bill Hicks, where he was talking about George Bush Sr.'s bombing of Iraq, like it seems like it was just brand new, fresh material, even though it was 20 years later. So when you go back and you look at what we were saying in 2008, 2009, at the beginning of this global financial crisis, and has been ongoing since, the beginning of the over the event horizon, I really believe, and you could see it in the charts, that you see something happened in 2000, 2001. That's probably, China becoming part of the WTO and us exporting all our jobs there. But nevertheless, like what you see from 2008, if you look at our content, it could be talking about today. It could be talking about this headline right here. We talk about the black hole of debt. We talk about the deflation. We're talking about that stuff. So this is like part of the continuum. So if you're a new young influencer just starting out talking right now today, and you might feel like maybe you're not contributing much, but like check back in 15 years time, like it might all come full circle and you might actually make sense in 15 years time.
Well, the difference is in the old days under mercantilism, countries were competing with each other, and but the new phenomenon, really starting with the 80s, was the coordination of the fraud on a global basis.
True.
And so that extended the fake bond rally for decades beyond its natural business cycle. But now it's at the end. So now all the central banks will collapse simultaneously, which is we've never, ever seen anything as globally catastrophic. Now, the fly in the ointment always has been, but this is really, and we've said this before, the ultimate reed in the wind, the litmus test, the canary in the coal mine, the one data point you look at to find out exactly what's going on is the Japanese yen. So the Japanese yen, because of quantitative easing, which was invented in Japan, Japan has always been what's called a funding currency. It's where every single country and every single hedge fund goes to borrow money at virtually 0% and then invest it immediately into a higher yielding currency like a euro or a dollar, and you capture what's called the carry trade. You could get 2 or 3%. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're borrowing it close to zero or at effectively zero, and you can borrow infinitely, then you can turn that 3% into an annualized rates of return or 50 or 60%. Now you're doubling your money every 2 years. Okay, so that's Japan's role, has always been the go-to place to borrow money. And right now, the yen is seemingly out of control on the downside, which means that the ability to maintain that global go-to open spigot of free money to fund this global Ponzi scheme, at the moment, it appears under extreme stress. If that cracks, I'm saying if that cracks, if the yen suddenly on Monday morning, you read the paper and like the yen has cracked badly and it's just absolutely falling apart, then that would be a Krakatoa event.
Because that carry trade primarily goes to U.S. Treasuries and the U.S. Treasury market. So the yen, Japan is the biggest buyer of U.S. Treasuries. So the fact that the yen is falling off a cliff against especially the dollar means they need more and more yen to buy those treasuries to keep that whole, entire Ponzi scheme. And the US dollar, the petrodollar, so dollar, oil, yen, like that's the backbone, and the euro dollar. So like there's like a few parts keeping this, like, just think of the global monetary system and financial system on top of that monetary system, like Madonna with her Instagram, like chatting to you and looking like a 22-year-old, right? And then like the algorithm is starting to turn off and you're starting to see, you know, that she's
Dorian Gray, Portrait of Dorian Gray.
Yes, it's like it's a horror show. And so that's what you're starting to see. You're seeing the flickers of it, is like the entropy is set into that system. It's at the as far as it could go. And the only thing they have left is these CBDCs, because then they could take 100% of what you have. Like
effectively, yeah, it's a way to steal 100% of your money. It's a confiscation of wealth.
Yeah.
They'll say, you have $10,000, we're going to give you 100,000 of CBDC, but what they're not telling you is that within 6 to 9 months, you'll have zero.
Yeah.
The purchasing power will be zero. It'll be effectively zero. So it's not a bailout. It's not a bail-in. CBDC is just an outright confiscation, just wholesale confiscation. And that's the end game. So that's what they're teeing up right now.
That's what they're teeing up. Fortunately, Max and I will hopefully have escaped by then completely to El Salvador. And we will be like in Bitcoin country. And, you know, you can't say
we need to bring this entire set with us.
Yeah, you can't say we didn't warn you, right? Like, what have we been doing for the last 15 years? Okay. Why do you think they disappeared all our content in the last few months? Because they know it's coming and they don't want you to fucking watch that shit that we provided for you. So, you know, oh God. No, what? You know what? This week we have we're releasing this video we made with it's an orange pill experience with Ricardo Salinas Pliego. So we flew from Mexico City to El Salvador. It was a really fun, interesting journey. I think you get to basically feel like you're part of this conversation on the plane. You know, we had a good time. It was a interesting vibe, a unique experience. We it took some risks. Like we didn't do the classic, 2-camera setup of the interview everybody does, like from 60 Minutes to every single podcast on earth. Like that's the setup they do. We experimented, we did some fun stuff, and I hope you like it, because it's, I had a good time, and I think it comes across. And, we definitely have like a Tarantino meets the, late 70s sort of film vibe.
Oh, yeah. I've seen the preview. It looks good. Sounds good. Ricardo sounds really good. He's just a guy you can talk on a lot of different subjects, and he's very accessible, and he's bilingual. So he's just a guy that has really studied this stuff for a long, long time. So yeah, I think it's going to be very enjoyed by many.
He's a very warm guy. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how warm he is. He's really smart. And you know what? Maybe it might not come through on this, because you don't really get to see just how long the day was. But he has a lot of energy.
Oh yeah. I realized that by the end of the day that the reason I don't have $25 billion is because I'm not willing to work that hard. Not as hard as Ricardo. I mean, that guy is...
Uncle Ricky works hard.
He works so hard.
Like, we were all of us, like me, Max, Samson, Hugo, his son. Like, we were like up at La Jolla, like going through the Bitcoin mine, and then the energy grid and the geothermal, and we were like, okay, come on, let's go. We've been up at the airport since 8 a.m. We flew, we talked, we filmed, we came up here, we had lunch with whatever that CZ guy. We had all this stuff. Like, we're tired. It's like 6 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock. We need to get back. And he's like, I want to go see one more part of it. And we're like, oh.
Oh my God.
No, you don't get to see that part on video. But nevertheless, it was a joy to spend the day with him. And, I'm glad Uncle Ricky, we've known him for a long time, and I'm glad he's now an open, an out member of the Bitcoin community. He's always been, more, reserved about his, Bitcoin holdings and being a toxic Bitcoin maximalist. But now he's out there with us.
He's having fun. He's a pleb. He's a born again pleb.
He's a billionaire Pleb.
So that's a lot of fun, and it's great. So looking forward to that, and hopefully we can do another one of these in the near future too, Stacy.
Yes. We'll do it with somebody else who has a private jet.
That's great.
Maybe we'll have to do it with Michael Saylor or who?
He has a big
Elon
boat.
Musk. Elon Musk. We're gonna take over Twitter with him.
Yeah, let's do it.
He's a shitcoiner in name only, right? Like all his holdings are Bitcoin. Like he's got massive holdings still. He hasn't sold any from Tesla, Elon Musk.
Oh yeah.
And yet he talks about Doge. Sorry, if you mention it in the comments, I'm going to have to block you. But anyway, he mentions that like as a troll, right? I don't think because he doesn't actually own any. So he's just trolling me.
I think he's moved beyond that. It was fun for a while. Now he's buying all this other stuff. But I saw he got into a flame war with Bill Gates on Twitter.
Good.
Which was really, really fascinating. So you've got a dissension in the super billionaire ranks, which is what you need for a revolution. The Thomas Jeffersons and the George Washingtons, they turned on their overlords and they started a new country. So same thing's going to happen with Bitcoin.
Actually, I want to make a final comment before we go because we just watched that Ben Franklin series that Ken Burns made, and it's really good. You should watch it. 2 very long episodes, and you realize that diplomacy, how important it is. We don't have it at all anymore, of course, but just the power of persuasion that we no longer have either is remarkable what that guy did. Like how he convinced the monarchy, the absolute monarchy of France, to finance against their own best, what would be best for them, to finance their American Revolution and send, ships and troops. Like if it were not for the French, the U.S. would still be part of the British Commonwealth, right? And Ben Franklin single-handedly convinced them to do it. Like it was the wrong thing for them to do financially. It literally destroyed the entire royal family. They all got beheaded because of it.
He started the French Revolution.
He started the French Revolution.
After being part of the American Revolution. So I dare find one other revolutionary in history that's had as much revolution as Ben Franklin. But so when are we going to be back doing our Orange Pill Live? This Orange Pill Live show. Well, what do you call it? Microdose, you call it. Isn't that what you young people call it?
Max doesn't seem to realize we're right here with you. Hi. Max is like, hey, Stacy, when are we going to do a microdose?
Hey, how you doing? Hey, kiddo. What up?
Hey,
what's going on over there?
Max just woke up. See, this is what happens when you pass a certain age. I don't know what's going on.
Whoa. I almost fell over. Look at this. I found this book on the bookshelf. This is from the collection we've had in the house for decades. I always mention Modigliani on this show. This is a book on Modigliani written by
Luigi gave us that.
He did?
Luigi gave us that, and I just put it on the bookshelf.
Oh, thank you, Luigi. Because who is Pincus and Leah? 1958. Happy birthday. Because I'm thinking that was my mother's. And I'm thinking, gee, who did my mom friend was Pincus and Leah 1958? I wasn't even born yet.
Oh, my God.
And I was putting
Max,
together
you
this
have
whole
to wake
scenario.
up at some point,
Happy birthday, dear Petey. With love from Pincus and Leah. First edition of this book, 1958.
He got it for you because you always talk about Modigliani.
Oh, I get it.
Max is like in his look in the event horizon of the black hole of his mind.
I'm already over the event.
And he's like, hey, I'm always talking about Modigliani.
How did this book
and how I found a book.
It must be from my mom where I got that. But no, it's from Luigi. Now that all makes sense.
Jeez.
I'm gonna have to read this now.
We're gonna really need to adopt some of you. Who's up for adoption? Somebody needs to come take care of us because this is really this is going off the deep end. Like
good old Modigliani, huh?
We should have minders at this point.
Well, the thing is, Picasso considered him his only real rival, Modigliani, because he knew how to draw naked women. That's the thing. If you look at some of these nudes, look at that. This. Picasso couldn't do a nude like that. Look at that. That's hot.
Let me see.
That's some hot patootie right there.
And then it was like when he's like,
look at that.
That whole period in Paris,
Wow.
Things were crazy. Passion, love, sex, painting. Didn't his like when he died, his mistress or lover or whatever, she killed herself. She like jumped out a window.
Oh yeah, all these artists,
in Paris.
they get involved in these drama queens, these chicks that blow their brains out or whatever. It's just part of the whole painting of that century. And Ben Franklin, apparently he was a big flirt. He was flirting all the time there in France. But I'm gonna read this book. That's what I'm gonna do. Yeah,
because French women have they don't mind really ugly men. It's interesting.
No, they think ugly short men like Serge Gainsbourg or that philosopher Levy, who's like
Bernard Henri Levy.
Oh yeah, he's considered to be the most sexy, desirable man of Europe, and he's a short, trolley-looking guy. It never shuts up. But I think Catherine Deneuve fucked him, and maybe some other hot.
There's
French
like Sarkozy.
chicks.
Who's the one after Sarkozy? That really squat guy. He had a hot wife as well, and then.
Oh yeah, she was married to that model that became a singer.
Sarkozy was married to a model, but then after Sarkozy, there was this really squat, short guy.
Oh, that guy,
who was like had glasses on.
He was in a tank when it was raining outside.
Yeah.
And became a national embarrassment.
Yeah, but he had all these chicks. Like he had a hot wife, and then all these lovers, and then they divorced, and it was just like the guy is like. 5'3", really squat and pretty ugly. Like, let's admit it.
I haven't yet deciphered that whole social convention in France.
Hollande, that was his name.
Oh yeah,
Francois
Hollande. He could get the chicks. Yeah. Well, Picasso wasn't exactly a stud-looking guy, was he? But
Picasso was like alpha male macho.
Yeah,
right. So
He's
Hollande is not exactly alpha.
Nor
is Sarkozy.
That's
so
right.
It's just like these are little verging on cuck sort of looking micropenis men. And you're
speaking of micropenis, you saw that whole story that came out that did a huge global survey on average men penis length in various countries. I think Ecuadorians came in number 1.
Ecuador?
That's what they said.
I don't know.
The U.S. came in like in number 57 or something, which was embarrassing, but at least we were ahead of the Brits. That's the only thing I was concerned about. We were like 2 centimeters longer than the average Brit. So, fuck you, Britain.
And America, you have Native American, and then you have like German Americans, Irish American, Black American, Hispanic American, of all varieties, including Ecuadorian American. So it's like, it's kind of hard.
It's not a scientific study.
No, I know. It's just like self-reported, and I don't believe that.
It was written by an Ecuadorian. I mean, that could have been the reason why Ecuadorian men were classified as having the longest on average penis.
Well, what do you say? Yeah, is that a good time to end it, or do you have any last questions? I'll check your questions out.
Has this been live? I thought we were doing this taped now. This is live. Oh, Jesus. I better watch what I say then.
Oh, Max, he just doesn't stop. This is the problem. Okay.
So
I'm going to look for your questions anyway.
You can do a reading from this.
Yellow.
Modigliani.
It was always about send bobs. I don't know what Yellow is. Half the time, I don't know what the fuck Yellow talks about.
He overdosed on Moussaka. And that's the problem with Yellow.
You mean I'm Malacca? Like he's always masturbating.
He Malaccas himself to oblivion. Right? He's got nothing but.
What about Greeks? How small is their micropenis?
They've Malacca'd themselves to stub. It's like barely a stub. It barely gets past out of the scrotum. It's like barely a scrub.
Yes, we are going to the Swan Conference out in the Pacific Swan Conference. That's at the end of September. So make sure to join that Telegram group. And I might add, like, of course, this content, whether you like it or not, is sponsored, by the way.
Oh,
you know,
Swan? Yeah.
There are people out there who like our content, and they love being part of our tribe of people. You know, swanbitcoin.com/orange pill. They're putting together that conference. They also finance the Orange Pill experience with Uncle Ricky, and then foldapp.com/orange pill. I am working on getting them down to our new homeland of El Salvador. Of course, swanbitcoin.com/orange pill is already available in El Salvador. And a lot of good stuff coming up in El Salvador very soon, by the way. Watch this space here because we have some big announcements for that country. And, of course, you know that we're bringing Jimmy Song there to teach some Bitcoin programmers there. So we have at least 50 already, which is the biggest crowd he's ever had by far. And it's also like the fastest he got there. So there's huge demand. You've got 50 people who qualify that you have to pass a test, which I failed. Couldn't pass the test to become, to actually even take the course with Jimmy Song. So we've got 50 people who will be taught 2 days intense course. And at the end of it, they will be able to program on Bitcoin. So they could work on any of these Bitcoin companies moving there, build on Lightning, Liquid, any of that stuff. And so we found all the sponsorship for that. All those Salvadorans will be attending that for free. It's a very high value thing, and including some of their hotel rooms or transportation. And more stuff on that coming, even deeper. It goes bigger and deeper after that. So I'm super excited about that because, El Salvador is Bitcoin country, and that's what we aim to stay. And check out my Twitter handle, twitter.com/Stacy Herbert, because I've got some cool art there. El Brandon Martin, he posted some really new cool art. I love his memes, especially when he puts us in El Salvador and the El Salvador flag and stuff. So with that, I'm gonna head out.
Stacy is the queen of Bitcoin. There she goes, Stacy is the one.
Let's see if there's any more questions down there.
Stacy.
Okay, the next party in El Zante will be at the end of July. So if you're planning your trip now, say the end of the third week, beginning of the fourth week of July. Let's put it that way. Okay? Any last words, Max?